Alright, it's been a year, so it's time for part 3 of turning your 2D original characters into 3D. So I reached out to you guys on Discord to drop your illustrations of your OCs alongside your backstories. I've actually already reviewed all of the submissions live. Yes, apparently I'm a streamer now. So let's just take a look at today's subject. Today's submission is by NeeshNeesh, a 3D character artist who is also a furry streamer. Who is also a streamer.
I am a furry.
Meet Peach. She's a small, ancient demon who wears frilly dresses but also dresses for the era. She pisses your bed in the middle of the night. Has anyone truly wet your bed, or has it always been Peach? Some scholars believe that there's a Peach inside all of us, and others argue that Peach targets children to teach them that failure is sometimes out of our hands. Peach is love, I say. Peach is life. I'm shocked. So I began brainstorming for ideas on stream. I wrote down a few poses that I thought suited her personality, did some sketches, and gathered a few references, all in PureF. One goal that I've set for myself was to focus on the character and not the environment. I'm gonna have to make some compromises. Obviously, I won't be able to do this all the time. It's gonna be more in the likes of this. Just a simple white background, the focus mainly being on the character itself. With that said, I quickly blocked out a few poses based on a little brainstorming session we just had, and I stuck with very basic primitive shapes. In this case, I basically relied on a UV sphere, a grab brush, and a dream. As for the braids, I used a path curve to block them out. The actual braids pattern, that's for future me to worry about. And just like that, we now have 3 poses to pick from. Before I tell you which one I picked, which one of these 3 would you have picked? Let me know in the comment section. Anyway, I really like the sneaky nature of number 3, so that's what I went with. I pulled out my phone camera just to gather some references, but I also wanted to see if I could push for a more dynamic pose. Yeah, judge me all you want, but can you really call yourself an artist if you've never had a foot cramp from taking your own reference photos? Now that we have our reference, it's time to tweak the block out to match it. There we go. I was happy with the gesture of this sculpt, so it was time to improve on the block out. And by that I don't mean to dive into the nitty-gritty details, but to just continue blocking things out such as the fingers, sleeves, colors, horns, etc. Now, at this point, I thought that the pose looked great. That was until I isolated the silhouette. Yeah, this feels so front heavy. You know, in color it looks okay, but in silhouette mode it looks very weird. So let this be a reminder that it can be really helpful to occasionally isolate the silhouette to identify any awkward errors that you wouldn't otherwise have noticed. Alright, now that the blockout is done, it's time to refine things. At this point, the pose, shapes, and proportions are pretty much locked in and no major changes would be made. Of course, little improvements would be made along the way, but anything from this point onwards would be to just turn the blockout meshes into whatever they were supposed to be. Now, let's talk a little bit about how I got the dress to go from this to this. Initially, what I had planned to do was to sculpt in the seams and folds with the multi-res modifier, but I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I ditched that idea and instead started with a cylinder. I deleted the top and bottom faces, turned on the X and Y symmetry, and slowly added more edges by beveling and adding loop cuts before moving the edges around to get the pattern that I wanted. Shout out Crows in chat who literally gave me the perfect string of words that led me to this reference photo. That is spot on, okay, thank you. Once I was satisfied, I made sure to add loop cuts around the skirt so that the quads are evenly spaced apart. Then, I threw in a lattice and fit it around the skirt before increasing the resolution. With the skirt selected, I added the lattice modifier and picked the lattice. And now it's just a matter of matching the skirt that we just created with the blockout. At one point, I found that it got a little tricky moving the vertices of the lattice. All I know is that I like the twist of the skirt, and moving the vertices outwards ruins the twist. So I applied the lattice modifier, created a new lattice with a lower resolution, and it worked. Now it was a lot easier to move the skirt around, and it doesn't destroy the twist. I then applied the lattice modifier, then added some shape keys to make some non-destructive adjustments to areas that turned out a little too flat. Now, I wanted some folds, so I threw on a multi-res modifier so that I could sculpt them in. Keep in mind that when you're working on a mesh with both a multi-res modifier and shape keys turned on, the multi-res modifier takes priority when making adjustments in sculpt mode, and shape keys take priority when making adjustments in edit mode. And that's it. Next, let's look at how I did the hair. The hair on her head was pretty simple. It's just a bunch of path curves that are assigned to a variety of profiles, arranged in a primary, secondary, and tertiary format that I talked about in my last video I did on stylized hair. And then I threw on the tiny hair shader, now available in my Gumroad, and that's it. It's not a very difficult process, just a tedious and time-consuming one. However, at the time, the same could not be said for the braids. It all began on a chill Friday midnight where I decided that I think I'm gonna do it, y'all. I'm gonna attempt doing braids. I have no idea how I'm gonna do this. So the wise thing to do would be to look for a tutorial on YouTube, right? But as a smartass once said, let's wing it. And wing it I did. It wasn't long until I had to do it again and again and again. I even started mapping out the direction of the braids and honestly felt that I was close, but still to no avail. I think this is it. Okay, again, we do it again. He's been doing this for 2 hours, I think. Oh my god, has it been 2 hours? Okay. Here we go. Here goes nothing. Wait, what the? Bruh.
Have you watched a video of
someone braiding their hair? The thing is, I've braided hair before. I know it consists of 3 chunks of hair. Click something in the brain. Let's do that. Imagine watching a braiding video instead of a tutorial. But hey, it's all about the concept that I'm trying to grasp. This goes below, and it goes above, and it goes below the other one. It has something to do with this view.
Spiral isn't right. I think it's a
figure 8. So 1, it goes over, and it goes under. My root is here. So it's going below, it's going over, going back. Oh, it is an 8. Yeah. How do I get from this piece of shit to this? Yeah, it is a figure 8. I don't even know if it's gonna work, but let's see. Wait a minute. Dare I rotate this? 3, 2, 1. Wait, did I do it?
OMG, you did it.
I did it. Did I do it?
I think that's
No
it.
way.
You did it. You have achieved your elation.
Let's go!
Yes.
Here's a tutorial on how to do it. Oh my god, here. Alright, but for real though, here's how you do it. I must warn you that my method is kinda hacky, so you have been warned. We're gonna need a single vertex at the center of the world, so we're gonna start with the default cube. Then in edit mode, select all the vertices and merge at center. Now here are the 2 shapes that we need to achieve. A Superman S and that figure of 8 that we talked about earlier. We'll be looking at the Superman S from the negative y-axis, so the front view, and we'll be looking at the figure of 8 from the z-axis, so the top view. Now, we're gonna be relying on the grids to guide us. The skill doesn't matter at the moment, we can always tweak them later. So let's go into the top view, the z-axis, and we're going to be extruding the vertex in this manner. So extrude, snap to this grid, extrude, snap to this grid, and keep going until we get that figure of 8. Then go into the front view, the negative y-axis, and bring down your last extruded vertex by 1 grid. Then select more by hitting Ctrl numpad plus, or whatever shortcuts you've assigned it to if you don't have a numpad, and bring it down by 1 grid. Select more, down by 1 grid, select more, down by 1 grid, and repeat until you get that Superman S. Once you're done, you should end up with something like this. In case you're not a fan of using the select more function, you could instead start from the top view, then hop into the front view for every extrusion to bring it down by a grid, and repeat until you get the same results. Now that we have this shape, let's convert it into a curve, then subdivide it by 1 or 2, then throw on an array modifier, and set the vector of x to 0. For this to work, all I know is that we have to somehow align this pattern in such a way that it loops forever. But as we mentioned earlier, we need 3 clumps of hair. So all we gotta do is to divide -1 by 3 on the vector of z. And now we have the building blocks to bring the braids to life. Then head over to the object data properties, geometry, bevel, and increase the depth. You'll soon realize that you don't exactly have to be too precise with the array values as long as it looks right. Now what if you wanted to UV unwrap this? Or maybe do a bit of sculpting to fit your style? For that, we're gonna remove all the modifiers that we had just created, then convert to mesh. Then simply reapply all of the modifiers with the same settings, and just like that, you can now unwrap your UVs so that it works with your shaders and sculpt till your heart's content. Let's create a path curve to control our braids. In order for you to control the braids with a curve, you're gonna need to do 3 things. Number 1, to have the starting point of a curve to be the origin point. Number 2, to fit the curve perfectly within the braids. which is why we should utilize the world origin to make our lives easier. Number 3, apply a curve modifier on the braids and pick the curve we had just created. You can now move the points of the curve around and even play with the scale of the vertices. Parent the braids to the curve, and now you have control of the position and the overall scale of the braids. Here are 2 things to avoid doing. Number 1, aligning the curve with the braids in edit mode, and number 2, applying any one of these object transformations to the curve. Now, all there's left to do is a little bit of texture painting and lighting. And that's it. That concludes the entire process, so thank you all so much for watching, and thank you once again NeeshNeesh for the submission. Her links will be in the description of this video. So without further ado, this is how it turned out.